We bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Brooke Thomas.
I'm Debbie.
And Romeo is on assignment.
Yes. On today's report, founder and president of Save Our Sons, Marcus Coleman, joins us to discuss the unsolved death of Kendrick Johnson.
Black students face a number of hardships in and out of school. We're breaking down how it affects their educational performance with UCLA's Dr. Stanley Johnson Jr.
Plus, Byron Allen sues McDonald's for alleged bias against Black-owned media. 7 Nooses stop construction on a Connecticut Amazon warehouse, as well as details on this year's BET Awards.
That's right. We have all that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth. So let's talk about it. All right, thank you for joining us. Here are your headlines for the day. A possible recorded confession in the death of Georgia teen Kendrick Johnson turned out to be fake. The Lowndes County Sheriff told Georgia's WALB News a tape recording of a man seemingly confessing to a crime was not genuine. Johnson was a 17-year-old Georgia basketball player. His body was found rolled up in a mat at Lowndes High School in 2013. Authorities ruled his death accidental, saying he suffocated when he got stuck in the mat while trying to reach a pair of shoes. A federal investigation came up with no definitive conclusions on how he died. The sheriff reopened the investigation this past March, pleasing the teen's parents, who remain convinced there was foul play in their son's death.
Joining us now to discuss the case of Kendrick Johnson is founder and president of Save Our Sons, Marcus Coleman. Welcome to the Black Report, Marcus.
Yes, thank you for having me. The organization is Save Our Selves.
Save Our Selves. Thank you so much for that correction. All right, so first things first, I want to hop right into it. How did you become involved with the Johnson case?
Shortly after Kendrick was murdered, I was contacted by the family, and that's been 8+ long years ago.
The sheriff announced a reopened investigation, and now, of course, we've gotten this latest information that the confession tape turns out to be fake. What can you tell us, Marcus, about where this investigation stands at this point, and can you tell us anything about that tape?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, we understand that's what the sheriff's department has concluded. We have not seen any documentation as it relates to voice analysis proving that. And we are in the process of having it authenticated on our own. So I want to make sure that, I'm clear. Our position at this point in time is we understand what the sheriff has said. We have seen no concrete documentation because supposedly that 25-second audio was sent off to a third-party company by way of the sheriff's department. And again, we have not seen any documentation proving such. And even if we did, we are still in the process of authenticating those 25 seconds on our own.
All right, so it's been reported there are actually 3 targets in the investigation. Please let us know who they are if you can tell us that information.
Well, let me make sure I'm clear there. Because, I mean, there's been a lot of people that have helped out. This mother and father and their family has been tenacious. But this case was closed on the federal level in June of 2016. And what I like to call the uprisings of this past summer. And, we have the Ahmaud Arbery's, the Breonna Taylor's, the George Floyd, the list goes on and on. It just didn't sit well with me that Kendrick Johnson's case was closed in the fashion that it was closed in. I want to make sure your listeners understand this. Kendrick Johnson's case started at Lowndes County Sheriff's Department, where it currently is now, but it went with help from Valdosta PD, the GBI, the FBI, 2 U.S. attorneys' offices, Middle District of Georgia, Northern District of Ohio, and ultimately it was governed by now retired Special Agent Deborah Sines, who was the head of the Homicide Division out of the Department of Justice. Kendrick Johnson's case actually was one of top 3 priorities for then Attorney General Loretta Lynch. And it was closed abruptly shortly after that. But I want to be clear. It was closed by the federal government, not stamped accidental. I heard earlier in the lead-in that the parents still maintain a position that their son was murdered. Well, there are two autopsies that support that position. There's three total. The first one, I believe you mentioned it in the lead up. Positional asphyxiation was the original cause of death, and that autopsy was done in the lab of the GBI. But since then, this mother and father have exhumed their child's remains twice. I want you to understand the condition that their child's body had to be in for the third autopsy. But the second and the third autopsy are identical, which conflict the first. The second and third say Kendrick died of blunt force trauma, and that's exactly what we believe happened.
And I'm told you're moving to your family to Ohio, and it's all regarding this case. Can you tell our soulmates why? What's the connection?
Well, I mean, that's the $1 million question. When this case, and let me back up because you asked a specific question about the targets. The targets of the federal investigation were two Lowndes County students who were brothers and their father. And their father was then a employed active FBI agent. He has since been able to retire. So I want to be clear, the federal government is the one that named those three targets. I fought tenaciously to get this case reopened, and that involved circling back to the U.S. Attorney's offices. And that's when I discovered or was told that the Middle District of Georgia had absolutely nothing to do with this case anymore. It had recused itself, and all questions are to be answered and asked out of Ohio. You ask why Ohio? Man, we honestly have never in these 8 years been given a concrete reason why Ohio was involved, but we have to connect the dots. One of the former targets of the federal investigation, which is now closed, lost a scholarship to Florida State, and he was picked up by Akron University. Akron University is in Ohio. That's the only parallel that we have to give you as to why in the hell we had to fly to Ohio in the middle of this pandemic and meet with the Northern District U.S. Attorney. And that ultimately led to 17 boxes being released from the Northern District of Ohio, sent to Lowndes County, which ultimately led to Sheriff Polk opening the investigation. Just one other footnote right here. Kendrick had 17 short years on this earth. I don't think it's happenstance that it's 17 boxes that were tucked away in the federal files that are now in Lowndes County that led to the reopening. We feel like each one of those boxes represents a year of his short life and ultimately will lead to the uncovering of this murder.
Marcus, I want to talk about back in 2018 when Kendrick's body was exhumed for a third autopsy. Can you tell us what the autopsy revealed?
The autopsy revealed exactly what the second one revealed. It revealed that Kendrick died of blunt force trauma. And some might say, well, man, a body in that type of condition and that type of decomposition, how would you be able to determine that? Well, the second and third autopsy literally line up with the original EMT's report. When I say the original, I mean when Kendrick's body was removed from that gym. I was getting ready to say pulled out the mat, but before the EMTs got there, Kendrick's body had already been moved. That's one of the problems with the investigative scene being tainted, not to mention detectives and officers weren't wearing protective gear going in and out. But the determination of that cause of death was due to severe hemorrhaging in tissue around the main area, the main artery in Kendrick's neck. When the EMTs removed Kendrick in their original report, they noted that Kendrick had severe hemorrhaging, around the main artery in his neck. So the positional asphyxiation we felt like was bogus and just an insult to people's intelligence, claiming that this child climbed on the bleachers and dove head first into a mat where the diameter of that mat was about 6 or 7 inches less than the width of his shoulders. And just very simply, the child could have knocked over the mat for this shoe that they claim that he was reaching for. So we've always felt the first autopsy was bogus, and there's a second and a third that's identical to conflict that.
So there were actually reports that his internal organs were missing. Can you let us know if that was true or not?
Every single organ in Kendrick's body was missing. Kendrick was also missing his entire tongue and his entire windpipe. Kendrick Johnson was literally flesh and bone, and his cavities were stuffed, or the empty cavities were stuffed with newspaper and magazine articles. To this day, no one knows what happened to Kendrick Johnson's organs. To this day, no one knows what happened to the clothes that Kendrick Johnson was wearing on the day that he was murdered. All of his nails were cut down to the point of bruising, which has never been explained. Kendrick Johnson, I'm from Atlanta. I'm 46 years of age. I grew up with having to be in the house as a child when the street lights came on because of the Atlanta missing and murdered children. Many of us know here that the person that they have incarcerated is not the only person that's involved. That would be Wayne Williams. My purpose for bringing the missing children murders up, because of the level of corruption and cover-up that existed, I personally don't think that there's a case in this nation that has the layers that Kendrick Johnson's case has. Remember, those 3 former targets, the FBI agent and his 2 sons, their home and their 2 separate colleges' dorm room, separate universities were raided. There were items seized. We never got a chance to see what was the outcome of that raid. And if your listeners know anything about the feds, when they hit regular civilians, they've already got you. So just imagine the amount of measuring and before they cut that they had to come and raid one of their own. It's not happenstance that this case is reopened. Kendrick Johnson's case has been one of the largest miscarriages of justice in this nation and definitely in the state of Georgia.
Marcus, what do you think happened to Kendrick?
It is our position that Kendrick was ambushed in the gymnasium. I'm extremely cautious. I don't know who killed Kendrick Johnson. We know that the feds did name 3 individuals, again, which is now closed, but it's back open on the state level. And we feel like that's a plus because the federal government closed this case due to the high bar, which former Attorney General Eric Holder told us the bar is set too high for any of these cases to get justice on the federal level. Well, there's no murder, there's no manslaughter on the federal level. It is on the state level. We feel like Kendrick was ambushed in that gymnasium. We feel like he was struck. Our hypothesis, our theory, our stance is supported by not just the 2nd and 3rd autopsy, but again, as I stated earlier, the original EMT's report. There's been no explanation as to why that hemorrhaging was there. And we feel like Kendrick was rolled up in that mat and stored while people got their stories together. And we feel like there's some people in very high places that have helped to cover this up. One other point I want to make about Kendrick that doesn't get talked about that much. There is also a theory of accelerated decomposition. It is our understanding by way of Mr. Johnson, when he was the only one that was able to view Kendrick's body, that Kendrick was not stored in a cool temperature cooler. It was heated. And I'll say that one more time. The storage of this child's body was in a heat, or the temperature of the temperature of the storing unit that this child remains were in were heated. That's why you see some horrific pictures that have been linked onto the internet that has Kendrick Johnson revealing a very famous child that we know by the name of Emmett Till. This is a massive cover-up. This is a professional cover-up. And we're 8+ years fighting this, and we look forward to get to the truth and appreciate you guys for covering it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Marcus, for joining us. And make sure you keep us posted because we definitely will continue to talk about this case.
Yes, ma'am. If I could just splash one thing for 10 seconds. Here in Fulton County, Georgia, we've done something historic. Hopefully I can come on later. But the Fulton County commissioners, Fulton County is the largest county in the state of Georgia. Just recently, they have erected a reparations for slavery task force, and that task force is tasked with finding methods of payment of reparations for the descendants of slaves in Fulton County. And yours truly happens to be the first appointee and the only one right now. So hopefully I can come on and talk more about that as we keep this Black liberation moving.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our next story for you today. The mayor of Newark, New Jersey is launching an experiment that has a lot of you talking. Hundreds of people will get free money for 2 years following a similar guaranteed income pilot program in Stockton, California. Advocates say the Stockton program was successful. We'll talk about that in a bit, but Newark's mayor actually first presented the idea in March of 2019 to help the city's struggling residents. The pandemic put those plans on hold, but now it's ready to go. The mayor is calling it the Newark Movement for Economic Equity. The 2-year program will pay a random selection of 400 Newark residents, a total of $12,000 each. You have to be 18 or older and have a household income that falls 200% below the federal poverty level. Let me just get the poverty level numbers for you. So, $12,880 for a one-person household. For a four-person household, that number goes up to $26,500. So you have to be below those income levels. I also want to go back to the Stockton program and specifically talk to you about what they mean when they say this was successful. An NPR report shows researchers say the Stockton program measurably improved participants' job prospects, financial stability, and overall well-being. And in that program, people were randomly selected and they were given $500 a month for 2 years, no strings attached.
Well, San Francisco did something very similar. And actually, the San Francisco pilot program, they guaranteed 130 recipients $1,000 in monthly payments for 18 months. And the people got their first payments today. Awesome. So, it's for some, $1,000 is not much, but for some, $1,000 is make or break a car payment, a house payment, getting food for your family. So, I think that's really awesome. And this is all under the umbrella of Mayors for Guaranteed Income. And there's a Twitter page as well that you guys can go and follow and, keep up to date with everything going on with that.